we're obviously in unprecedented times at the minute. The marketplace at the minute for property investment and all ancillary services has basically been thrown up in the air somewhat. The last couple of months have seen unprecedented change, and what we've actually seen is the majority of companies out there actually coming together, communicating, and trying to work collaboratively to pull things back together. The changes that we've seen in businesses in general and lenders, I think, has been quite remarkable. What normally takes years to get agreed has started to move quite quick. And I think that we'll be seeing a return to the proper market, hopefully in 3 to 6 months, with business volumes back up, ideally between 6, 9, 12 months down the line. That obviously depends on what happens with the current circumstances, and do we get another peak and further restrictions, etc. Currently, as a rough overview or a brief overview of the market, service centres again are opening for the majority of banks, which is brilliant. Lenders are being proactive and genuinely wanting to lend. So with regards to the broker community, certainly all lenders are communicating an awful lot, which is brilliant. We're getting updates from pretty much all of them every day, which is quite a lot of reading. And the surveys, which were the main bottleneck up until about a month, 6 weeks ago, are now starting to filter through. So as of Monday just gone, surveys were being re-instructed again, which is fantastic. I still think there'll be delays in getting those things through. But what we're likely to see is that mortgage offers will start coming out probably in the next 2 to 6 weeks, bringing the backlog up to date, which is good. That's definitely good news. We're then likely to see a bit of a bottleneck in conveyancing, because I know a lot of the legal firms that we've come across recently have furloughed a lot of staff. I think, as with lots of businesses, they'll be looking to take advantage of that to protect their own businesses. So I think that will be the next bottleneck. And then with regards to legals, I think getting searches and stuff, that kind of thing back is likely to be a bit of a slog, because a lot of the councils have quite simply just shut their departments, which isn't helpful. We've had a bit of a flurry of people looking to buy. Those people who have already prepared what they want to try and do with regards to lending are probably a bit ahead of the game. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there to be had right now. Buyers who had agreed prices will be looking to sell as quick as possible, to obviously ensure they get the best price for their stock. And I think those looking at to buy, conversely, will be looking to get the most thrifty price for what they're buying. So I think in general, everybody should be working together to keep chains alive, communicating with each other to ensure that if things do come up or there's bottlenecks, that everybody understands what those are, and really making sure that things progress. With regards to the high street, so the high street at the minute is very much coming back to life. High street in terms of high street lenders as opposed to retail. What we saw a month to 6 weeks ago was that pretty much all of the big lenders, so that the Halifaxes of this world, the Santanders, the HSBCs, immediately put in place restrictions on loan to values and lending criteria. The simple reason that they did that was because a lot of them have in the past worked on an automated valuation model. So an automated valuation model simply means that they use indicative data in the market. So things like Zoopla, a lot of the big lenders have got their own indices to work from, and they'll use these as a rough guide, or fairly accurate guide, should I say, to the value of property that you're looking to secure money against. A lot of those were already, to some extent, offering an automated valuation model up to around 60%. So what we saw immediately when there was a restriction on surveys is that was put in place. However, what we also saw was where the mortgage lenders were looking at buy-to-lets, we're looking at anything with high loan to value, refurbs, bridging exits, anything that's kind of outside the like-for-like remortgage or straightforward purchase. they were looking for a bit more detail. And it's these kind of cases that are currently sat in the backlog. The good thing is that with the backlog is that mortgage lenders have been very, very proactive and open about how they're dealing with these things. And we are going to see these things start to progress as physical valuations get done moving forward. I'll come back to the valuations further on down the line. In the high street, what we're seeing is that loan to values are now starting to increase. Lenders are still generally being a little hesitant, around 80–85%, some less. And then you've got the likes of HSBC, which came straight out with 90%, leading the way a while back, which is fantastic. Again, all of this information really comes with a proviso that that each mortgage is relative to the individual taking it. So a lot of this is massively, well, it's all completely subject to lending criteria and survey and legals. So this really should be taken generically as opposed to anything else. We've got a lot of clients who are involved in a variety of different scenarios. So we have lots of clients who are operating on a standard buy-to-let basis. We have clients who are working the HMO model, either as buying HMOs outright, or alternatively buying properties to convert to an HMO. And we have clients who have gone down the route of purchasing commercial property to convert that into resi or part resi, and each of those scenarios has a slightly different lending requirement. What we're likely to see, or what we're currently seeing at the moment, is lenders dipping in and out of the market. Lending criteria is likely to change. I think that the new normal is going to be very, very different moving forward, in that lenders are really looking to, they need to lend because that's how they make money, but they're also looking to ensure that they do so in a safe and secure manner. The current marketplace at the minute is a massive opportunity for the specialist market. So the specialist market, I would include under this as basically anything other than a standard residential maximum 75% mortgage. So anything where rental incomes need to be stretched on buy-to-lets, any specialist lending on properties, self-employed, people who've only got 1 year's worth of incomes, for example. There's a lot of lenders at the moment who are actively looking to see what they can do to take advantage of that market, because certainly a lot of that is not going to fit into the standard high street. We're going to see a big change, more than likely, in the attitude for commissions, for contractors, for anybody who is working on a contract basis, because again, that's really just down to the questionable longevity of their contracts. And I would expect rates in the specialist market to rise slightly, given that, just to cover the risk really, given that rates at the minute are ridiculously low. I don't think that's going to make a huge difference, but obviously banks and building societies and specialist lenders have got to cover their overheads. But as I said, it's a massive opportunity, I think, for specialist lenders to lend at the minute, and I think that they will do very well out of it. Certainly, some of the smaller lenders have been extremely flexible, and the kind of lenders who you can pick up the phone and talk to, which theoretically would include some of the bigger players, but they have such big numbers to deal with, and really just the staff restrictions just don't enable that at all. The lending market at the minute is potentially going to impact your strategy. The new normal, or whatever that new normal becomes over the next couple of months, development exit routes may be questionable. There's a lot of bridging lenders at the minute who are making an awful lot of noise as to the lending that they will do. A lot of that, in my opinion, is really to kind of carry favour with the funding lines that they have. They obviously need to demonstrate that they've got enough business interest to continue pulling the lending in. But I think what we're going to see is that safe and sensible lending in every aspect is going to become key to the whole market, really. Bridging lenders, for example, are likely going to want to ensure that you have a variety of exit routes. They're likely to want to ensure that you are able to come out of the bridge in a variety of different ways, i.e. Is it a conversion that you're doing to sell? Is it a conversion that you're going to be looking to refinance to pay off the bridge, etc.? And what's the term of the lending? We've seen a number of clients who've been involved in development projects where the term has just changed, and the term can have changed quite significantly depending on the size of the product, size of the project, should I say? Simply because there's not really a clear end result as to when you can get a development finished. Is it going to take a while to get the building regs sorted out? Are they going to be able to get the labour on site and get the bits and pieces that they need to actually legally then sell on as a mortgageable asset? So these things are all going to change, and I think that's where having proper conversations to properly plan the process and ensure that everything is above board and correct are going to be incredibly important. Gone are the days where you can just kind of wing it and see if it fits. It's just not going to work on that basis moving forward, I think. So there's going to be a lot that comes out of this market, a lot that's incredibly positive. And I think that will be incredibly positive for the lending market and people actually who are looking to borrow money, which is great. I mean, it's obviously a pretty severe way to shake things up. But out of all these things, there's always going to come an opportunity for everybody, which is great. One thing that I always bang on about is clients being as prepared as they possibly can be. The marketplace at the minute, the fantastic thing about the financial services, certainly the lending side of things for a while, has been that lenders openly advertise the criteria that they have for you to borrow money. Now, all lenders have the written criteria. All lenders have their unwritten criteria. The unwritten criteria tends to be the does it make sense question. Is this correct? Do the numbers really stack up? Where's the beneficial interest? That kind of thing. And in looking at that, a lot of lenders are just looking to be seen to be lending safely and sensibly. As such, the attention to detail on cases is likely to be slightly harder, especially on self-employed or where there's building projects in place. But again, if everything is kind of planned in advance, if everything is done with kind of a plan in mind as to what is the end goal, then it should work very nicely. There's no reason in the current market for any massive surprises. Yes, we may have issues with down valuations because the surveying community is likely to be hesitant with regards to 3-month valuations. But I think that will stabilize moving forward. As and when we do have down valuations, we do have to discuss it and make an adult decision as to what the right thing to do is, whether it's change lender or go back and just challenge the survey. It's not really any hugely different. Timescales with regards to preparing and managing expectation, I think, are massively important at the minute. Pretty much every developer that we ever speak to wants everything done yesterday because that's what they are. However, I think the majority of developers that we're coming across at the moment are massively appreciative of being told, what's going on. What is the delays? Are things moving forward? Are the delays in the bounds of control of the buyers? Is there things that we can do to speed legals up? I think a lot of the legal, the conveyancing companies that we come across are struggling a bit simply because they've furloughed a lot of their staff. And unfortunately, if mortgage companies want lots and lots of different things doing, then you can't get around that. They very much hold the keys to the lending in that capacity. So with regards to being prepared, I think it's purely and simply finding out what you need to supply up front, ensuring at the point of application that everything is in one place and accessible. Bluntly, any lender is going to prioritize clean and simple cases that can actually proceed, because I mean, if you were given a mess in one hand and a clean case in the other, you're going to go with the clean case, quite simply because it's easier, it's faster, and that will be the case moving forward, probably more so than it is currently. That will also enable clients to clear out lenders to clear out their pipelines, because there will be a lot of stuff that's been sat in pipeline probably for a month or 6 weeks now. And if it's not going to clearly complete, they'll more than likely just kick it out, simply because they need to progress the pipelines. They're going to need to justify to funders where the money's coming from in terms of lending out, so they know when the lending is going to come back in. Valuations really, so there's a really important couple of points with regards to valuations currently. With any mortgage valuation, mortgage lenders like to appoint their own independent surveyor to actually go and look at a property. The reason for the independence is basically to prevent against fraud, and very simply to ensure that the person going out is actually verifying that the property is worth what it's worth, and just to make sure that the property is worth sufficient to cover the risk and the security that you wish to hold against it. Connells this week have been really helpful in sending out instructions with regards to how they're actually looking at managing the process, because it's not going to be quite as simple as valuation process has been in the past, where they just you ring them up, they throw a set of keys at them and they go in. So Connells at the minute are apparently booking an appointment risk assessment before they go out. When the person rings up to book in the survey, they'll be asking, does anybody in the house, are they suffering or suspected to be suffering from COVID-19 symptoms? Anybody in the house self-isolating, because obviously they're going to need to potentially go into each room. And has anybody in the property been identified as clinically extremely vulnerable? Now, there's a lot of people out in the community that have been or do fall into one of those categories. So I would advise, as much as possible, to give any surveyor just complete open access to the property, i.e. get everybody out of it, and give them the best opportunity that they have to feel safe and secure getting around it. Because the last thing you want is for somebody to turn up and then decide that they can't get into one room, because they will then have pocketed the survey fee. What they're also saying is that approximately 15 minutes prior to the call, they'll give you a call and reconfirm the same questions again. And basically, they're very, very clear, as they all will be probably, that the surveyor reserve. I don't think that with any of our key workers. I think they're all doing a great job in going into some places that some of us wouldn't necessarily want to be taking the risk to be in. But I think if the overall expectation is managed clearly, and everybody knows what they're doing, I don't think it should be a huge problem. As with all these things, it's very simply about knowing where different people sit in the equation, and working proactively with everybody else to make sure it fits, which I think is relatively straightforward. I've got a question. Oh, Paul, right. Okay, so what rates can you secure currently in a personal name and limited company purchases? Right, I'm going to actively avoid specific criteria and rates in all of these, because the rates are changing literally on a daily basis. And frankly, whatever I say now is going to be wrong probably by 5 o'clock. As a rough rule of thumb, resi rates at 75% are for a 5-year fixed rate around 1.5. There is plenty of buy-to-let rates around plus or minus 2.5%, and the limited company rates are about 0.75 higher than that. But it massively depends on individual criteria. Lenders have become ridiculously specific about what they do and don't want to do. And that includes income, assets, liabilities, number of properties in the background, business plans. Some of them ask for a business plan, future intentions of occupancy, etc. And it would be wrong to sit there, and I've always believed that it's wrong to sit there and quote rates to clients without actually having the proper information on file beforehand, because it's just going to be wrong. And there's nothing more frustrating than turning up to buy a property and somebody says that, oh, you promised me 1.5%. We have this every day. Clients who speak to the man down the pub, who's told them that a limited company buy to let is going to be 1.5%. It's not happening. It's not there. The rates are all very clearly advertised. The criteria is very clearly advertised. As I said, they've got obviously the written criteria and the unwritten criteria, and it's much better to get correct factual information rather than have if, buts and maybes, because it's relatively straightforward to get this right as long as you cover everything else, cover everything off properly, I think. As I said, this is all going to change moving forward. When will the floodgates open? I don't know. I think that if you listen to some of the bigger networks, we're part of a network called Primis, who are part of the LSL Property Group. They've got an extremely good idea of what's happening with the market, and they're looking at a longer return rather than a shorter return, which I think is probably sensible. However, I know that there is plenty of opportunity out there at the minute where developers are looking to sell stock to move on to other developments. And there's certainly, I think that if we've got clients who are looking at pulling money out of property to buy additional assets, I think that's a key one to do as quick as possible, especially if your property's in the southeast, because cash flow is going to be king. If you're in a position whereby you're pulling money out of a property that's worth, I don't know, 350 now, very possible that with a downturn in the market in the southeast, that could be worth 3, which could then affect the rate that you pay, but could also significantly affect the amount of money that you can get out of it. So people who are looking at upsizing with regards to property portfolios and moving forward and buying again, I think that's incredibly important to kind of crack on and see what they can do. As with everything, it's about being. I always bang on about being prepared, but it's so incredibly easy to be ahead of the game if you plan everything up front, because you're then in a position to jump in or not, as the case may be. If you're in that position, you can walk in and pick up bargains right now, very simply because you're ahead of the game. There's lots of first-time buyers coming back to the market at the minute, which I think is great. That's always good for the whole market. I think what we'll see is people looking to get fantastic deals on the basis that they have no chains. And we're also seeing a number of people breaking chains actively so that they're not in a chain moving forward. So I would think there'll be a lot of people moving out of residential properties into shorter term rentals in order to do that. So there's lots and lots of opportunity. I did one of these 2-3 weeks ago, and the message was very much use this time wisely to learn and fill gaps in knowledge. I think we're kind of out of that now. I think that there will be an awful lot still to learn. There's going to be a huge amount still to change coming, and I think if you are actively looking at buying or releasing money, or basically if you're looking at pulling money out in any way, shape or form, you want to look to see what you can do as quick as possible, and then make a decision to either wait a short term to see what happens with the lending market, or jump in and take what you know you can. I've always thought it's better to take what you know you can, as opposed to waiting for things to change. Probably also worth flagging up that the historic jobs that people thought were kind of high risk or safe have all changed. So anything in hospitality, anything in the airlines at any level are all potentially going to change. It wouldn't be a huge surprise if the buy-to-let providers on a standard buy-to-let limited company or a commercial basis reduce their rental income calculations and make it slightly more conservative, simply because we don't know what the market's going to do. I would expect a lot of HMO landlords, for example, to be in a position where they're having some rental voids. I know a number of the clients I've spoken to the last couple of weeks have started to have clients who are either paying late or paying part of the rent. And it'd be interesting to see how lenders view that moving forward. I think it'd be very difficult to look at the payment history of every single bedroom in every single HMO when it comes to finance. But I would think that there'll be a margin factored in to do that at some point. Does anybody have any questions? Silence.
Actually, David, I'll jump in here. Actually, were you going to talk about the legal aspects of limited company lending and all of the idiosyncrasies that surround that?
Yes, because there's a number of them. Okay, so with regards to with buying in limited companies, buying in limited companies is generally, depending on your circumstances, more tax efficient. What we've seen is a degree of confusion over the past 3 to 6 months with regards to legalities and what actually is getting done. The bottom line is that lenders don't all trust solicitors. So a lot of the solicitors, a lot of the limited companies, should I say, who operate in the limited company lending market will ask to appoint their own solicitor or a member of their own panel in order to act for them. So some lenders essentially want to have their own solicitor in place. As a client, people normally have instructed their own solicitors, but that can then mean that you have your solicitor's fees to pay and the lender's solicitor's fees to pay, which can obviously double depending on who the case is. Our experience, certainly in the last couple of months, is that the lender solicitors have been amazing. They've been really, really good, very proactive, very, very keen to get the deals done, which actually is something that we've rarely experienced before. But I think basically that they need to keep the lenders happy because that will be a big chunk of their business. And they have been very, very proactive, which is brilliant. There's also a number of other things that clients need to know when buying. So if you're buying a limited company, by and large, it tends to be a person who sets up a limited company and purchases in that limited company. So the limited company is in essence a tax structure. It's nothing else. If you were to get a loan out for IBM, for the sake of argument, then you would be advised to get independent legal advice to confirm that you're aware of the personal guarantees that you're taking on that deal. A small limited company, even if you own 100% of the shares, is exactly the same. Lenders will still want to evidence that you've had independent legal advice in order to confirm that you fully understand the loan that you're taking out. In reality, the legal implications are very rarely any different to the personal guarantees you'd have on a personal mortgage. But the bottom line is that these lenders are looking to ensure that you don't turn around at some point down the line and say, I didn't realize I had the liability. It's owned by the limited company, who's its own legal entity. So it's a proactive step for them to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing. Does that make sense? Now, where the surprise comes is that we've seen clients be charged anything from 250, 300 quid, all the way up to 600 or 700 quid plus that for that independent legal advice. And some solicitors will take it substantially more seriously than others. Some will want to have a face-to-face meeting and they can go a bit over the top with it. Others will basically stick to the aspects of what is a personal guarantee and are you comfortable with borrowing X amount of money. Again, it's just down to the individual solicitor. Much of the legals around this kind of thing are very much down to a solicitor's interpretation of the guidelines. So yeah, that's where you get such a big variety. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Probably something also worth adding to that, getting solicitors to communicate can be interesting. So open lines of communication are incredibly important, just to make sure that everything's done as quickly as it possibly can be. Very few of them still work on paper, but quite a lot do. it can often be helpful just to suggest that they use email or the telephone.
I suppose a comment to be made there is that perhaps from the outset, it's a good idea to make sure that you've got all of your strategic partners lined up before you proceed with any investments. So you've got your mortgage broker, your accountant, your solicitor, and make sure that they've actually been introduced to one another. That could save a lot of problems further down the line. Would you agree with that, David? In terms of when egos start to kind of step into the equation, it's probably better if they've had a chance to be introduced rather than at the 11th hour when it's all panicked.
Yeah, I think the ability to play handbags at dawn within the property buying triangle, if you like, it just never ceases to amaze me. Ultimately, everybody involved in the transaction works for the client. We should have the client at the center of our world. And I think it's incredibly important that from the mortgage broker side of things, that we talk to the accountants and the solicitors actively, mostly because actually when clients ask for things, they don't actually ask for the right thing. So we could be asking an accountant, for example, for a version of a form that a lender decides that they want. And 9 times out of 10, clients don't ask for the right thing. So that can save a huge amount of time and upset. And it also then saves the client money because they're not paying for stuff that's not being done. With regards to a lot of, obviously, estate agency businesses have been shut down and furloughed a lot of their staff recently. So the sales progression on a lot of cases won't have been what it could be. That also leads to a huge amount of confusion. Unless things are very actively pushed through and we make sure that everybody knows very clearly what they're doing. We're all human, we all make mistakes, but a bit of additional communication makes all the difference. It's just ensuring that everything can be done quickly and simply, and that if we've already got something, has something been missed on the file that you already have? In my view, there's nothing wrong with saying that. We come across a lot of conveyancing firms who will say they haven't got it just because the volume. If you ever see the volume of paperwork that solicitors get, it's just ridiculous. So it's dead easy to miss stuff, and if we can help clarify the position or help them with contacts in doing that, I think that's hugely beneficial. There's no need for it to be done in anything other than a very cordial fashion. You're going to say something else, Gavin? I can see.
No, I was just nodding in acknowledgement of what you just said. Does anybody have any questions for David? Is anyone thinking of investing at any point this year, and they're thinking about their lending strategy, or has anyone had an interesting experience with mortgages this year or within the last year that they'd like to share?
Oscar, was that a hand up? Oh, you're muted.
It wasn't a hand up. It was on all honesty. No, nothing at the minute. Still working away on something. So I'll get back to you in a sec.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
I think the market as a whole is a huge opportunity right now. I think that never has there been a better time to get out and communicate with everybody in the process. Find out what properties are out there. There'll be stuff that comes to the market. There'll be stuff that people are giving cheeky offers on that they want to sit on. I think there'll be an element of gazumping comes back shortly, just because people selling are going to want to get the best price. And certainly on a residential basis, I think that that will be cause for excitement. But generally, I think it's a great market at the moment. Certainly for opportunity. The changes that we've seen in the marketplace over the last month are absolutely unprecedented, and it is fantastic that lenders are being or looking to be, should we say, so driven to change the market and to make it more accessible for all, which I think is brilliant. If you had said, that certain lenders would be looking at changing loan to values or rates or or credit criteria, etc., you'd never have thought that possible. But then again, had you said 6 months ago that that the government will build a 4,000 bed hospital in the East End in 2 weeks, you'd all think you're mad, wouldn't you? So I think all of this has been driven out of necessity, and I think there'll be a lot more of that to come, which, as I keep saying, is massively great for the economy and what's going on. I think it's a good thing that people are using the challenges to change and adapt, and hopefully as the marketplace recovers or comes to a new normal, whatever that may be, I think that'll be a much stronger new normal than it was before. A lot of the kinks have been knocked out the system. A lot of the things that could be done to make things more efficient, easier to proceed, I think that's going to be a fantastic thing. A lot of lenders have changed their processes so that are a lot more electronic. On one side, that's great because it means that they will be in a position to do everything electronically. On the other side, that's also more opportunity for the specialist lenders who don't necessarily work on the computer says no model or the computer says yes model. And certainly a lot of the mortgage providers have used that as a filtering system, and will probably need to more moving forward. But as I said, it's just that's also a huge opportunity for the specialist market. Pretty worth flagging up that specialist doesn't necessarily mean a negative thing. Specialist purely and simply means that it's not necessarily high street. But I think a lot more lenders will start being a lot more lenient on credit. We're going to see lots of people who fall into mortgage arrears or financial difficulty. They're going to have to deal with all of that moving forward. There's a huge number of people have taken mortgage holidays. We've been assured that that's not going to affect credit score moving forwards. I clearly don't think it will do, if they're saying it won't. But there will be clients who've taken up holidays, and they'll slip through, and it'll get counted as arrears. That will happen. So again, if people are looking at doing anything, it's worth looking at everything and making sure things like that don't happen, because it will at some point. And just making sure that everybody makes the best out of every situation, which I think is a good thing, really. One thing I've certainly noticed is that the majority of the people in the buy-to-let development portfolio community, if you like, the ego has very much gone from the conversations. And I think that's also hugely beneficial, because people are looking to make things work. They're looking for new angles, and they're looking to get deals through. And it's just it's a lot less ego driven than I think it has been. Now, will that come back? Probably. There's always going to be certain individuals who that's the way they are. But in general, I think it's been very, very positive for the market. It's a bit of a harsh positive, obviously, but I think it's been a good one. I guess the main message with everything is kind of what can you do for yourself, really. I think most importantly, know your game plan and stick to it. Whether it's an HMO, scenario, a refurb scenario. Excuse me if you can hear the child singing in the background. Beauties of working at home. So whether it's an HMO scenario, whether it's a refurb scenario, buy-to-lets, or commercial, or a mixture of everything. I mean, we have a lot of clients who do a bit of everything. I think it's incredibly important to know your strategy, to discuss it with a mortgage broker, with an accountant. If you're looking at a longer term retirement planning scenario, then also look at estate planning, that side of things. So own it and fully understand the process. Most importantly, have proactive communication and a collaborative, I hate this, but power team, but it's so important. The team of people around you is more important now than it ever has been. Get them talking, make sure they work together. If they don't work together, change them. It's not an issue, but you as a client need to be central to all of that, and they need to revolve around you, not the other way around. Make sure that you have everything prepared in advance. Ask if you're going to need, if there's going to be anything else required. Don't necessarily accept. If somebody says everything's going to be all right, it's not necessarily. Lending in the UK is not contractual until it's actually completed, and lenders reserve the right to pretty much do what they want. So there'll be a lot changing in the coming weeks and months. Lots changing. Lending will change it will change on a weekly basis, definitely. It's changed massively in the last 2 weeks. The updates that are coming out are just insane, but it's also incredibly good because it shows that the lenders are communicating and they're actively looking to lend, which is a great thing. I've never experienced this amount of communication from lenders, so I think that's a huge benefit. Will they tell us where they're going to be in 2 weeks? No, because that's kind of almost like an evolutionary process right now. The majority are coming back to the market. They're all looking to play, or the majority are looking to play, which is great. I just think that if everybody can do as much as they possibly can to proactively prepare what they're trying to achieve in advance, I think that'd be hugely beneficial. Probably also worth mentioning that normally we don't get asked for new tax returns for up to 3 months. So typically we're now what, in week 6 or 7 of the new tax year. Typically we don't start getting asked for tax returns for new mortgage applications for about 3 months. I expect that to be sooner this year, simply because lenders are going to be able to do it, and they're going to be looking to ensure what people have earned over the last 6 months. So I think that they're going to be tighter on criteria, and I would expect that to start to be asked. So if anybody is looking at buying or doing anything, get your tax returns in quickly, just because that's generally what we expect to happen. Generally does, then that's just based on experience in the market. Does anybody have any questions? Relatively straightforward answer to that is that we don't know what's going to change. We've got a fairly good idea that the changes are going to be increasing loan to values. The changes in lending criteria with regards to income multiples and rental calculations, we don't know. Bottom line, I mean, the market is going to come back. It's just a case of if and when. So I think the best thing you can possibly do is pull together all the paperwork, because if you were doing it today, and look at the model of what, depending on what your strategy is, look at the picture of where you are right now, and kind of make actually a very prudent thing to do that, because you're then in a position to say, well, this is what it looks like today. What would it look like with an increase of 10% loan to value? Or what would it look like if the property values were to drop slightly? And that's the only way that you're going to be in a position to make a decision. Nobody's got a crystal ball, clearly. And genuinely, although we've all got a fairly good idea of where things might go, based on previous experience, we're in completely uncharted territory. And I think the only thing that you can do is be as clear as you possibly can where you are currently, and then look at the possibilities moving forward.
Can I jump in and make a comment, please, actually? Just kind of add some value to what you just said. I think what you said about getting all your paperwork in order from day one, I think is a really, really good idea. So if any of you are even remotely thinking about getting involved in property investment at some point during this window, where we don't really know what's going to happen, then I would speak to, have a chat with David or someone like David to actually find out, what do I need? What am I going to be asked for if I do apply for a mortgage, whether that be a traditional buy-to-let mortgage, whether that be for a limited company mortgage, whatever it might be. Get all that information ready. I would then speak to an accountant and make a decision about whether you're going to invest as a sole trader or a limited company. Do that now, okay? Make a decision now, get advice now, and decide. If you know you're going to be doing something and you're going to be doing it through a limited company, get the company set up now, okay? What you don't want to do is find an opportunity and be late to the party. Get yourself organised now, because even if you don't buy for 3 or 4 months, all you're going to need to do is top up your file of documents with the most recent bank statement, the most recent payslip. Yeah, it's all of those things. And then whilst you're doing that, have a think about your strategy and how you want to invest. So let me give you an example. If the best way to think about opportunities now are that whoever's selling a property, what would their reason be to sell at an even bigger discount now than had COVID-19 not happened? So I'll give you some examples. New build, property developers. The likes of Taylor Wimpey aren't going to be discounting their properties now because they don't have any debt. Okay, so they're going to hang on more than likely. And if they want to, they can just put tenants in properties that are completed and ride out the storm until the market picks up again, and then sell at that point. Or you might have developers who have got heavy bridging finance on a plot of land. They're going to be more incentivized to move their stock and will be more likely to discount their stock at that point. So we know which developers we're working with are in that position and which ones aren't. So we'll be able to tell you very quickly who to approach. But also think about all the accidental landlords who are now stuck with properties in their own names, and they're now getting rinsed on income tax because they haven't got a strategy in place with the new tax rules that have come in. So you combine, you think about those people there. They might be a bit more flexible. If their circumstances have changed financially, they might be willing to sell, and you might be able to get a little bit more money off. Or maybe they'll, they've got money in the bank, they might just sit it out for 3 or 4 months and hope that things improve. So the opportunities will be there, but get your mortgage, get a decision in principle, just get all your documents organised, and then start thinking about, do I want to go for new build or ready tenanted? And then once you decided that, then start thinking about, you're going to have a conversation with us about identifying vendors who are more incentivized to sell. That's where you'll get the deal.
I think the most important thing is just giving yourself a start. You're not gonna. You're just there's this misconception with a lot of people that think that just because they start talking about mortgages, they're kind of committed to buy. You're not. It's part of the jigsaw. It's very much part of the process, and you've got to start somewhere. So start the conversations. For example, it could take you a couple of weeks to get a limited company set up if you don't have the right bits and pieces. It could definitely take you a couple of weeks after that to then open a limited company bank account, because a lot of the banks have been shut. So even if you start the process now, it's very possible that it could take you a month before you're actually ready to properly pull the trigger and buy anyway. But again, we're only going to know that once we start the process and work out where you are and what you're doing.